In 1565, a tiny island fortress became the stage for one of history's most epic clashes. This is the story of the Great Siege of Malta, where a few thousand defenders stood against the mightiest empire of the age. It was a battle of faith, steel, and unbreakable will. The defenders were the Knights Hospitaller, an ancient Catholic military order. Just a few decades earlier, they had been driven from their stronghold on Rhodes by the very same enemy now sailing towards them, the Ottoman Empire, led by the formidable Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent. After their expulsion, they were granted the barren islands of Malta. It wasn't much, but its location was everything. Malta was the key to the Mediterranean. If it fell, the path to Europe would lie open. Sultan Suleiman, now in his 70s, was determined to finish what he had started. He assembled a colossal armada, one of the largest ever seen. Over 200 ships carried an army of more than 40,000 elite soldiers, including the feared Janissaries. At its head were the experienced commander Mustafa Pasha and the brilliant Admiral Piyale Pasha. Their orders were simple: eradicate the Knights and take Malta, no matter the cost. Awaiting them was Grand Master Jean Parisot de la Valette. At 70 years old, he was a veteran of the Siege of Rhodes, a man forged in battle and devoted to his order. He was calm, resolute, and utterly uncompromising. De la Valette's forces were terrifyingly small, just 500 knights, alongside a few thousand Spanish and Italian soldiers and Maltese militia. In total, perhaps 9,000 men against 40,000. Their hopes rested on the island's three key fortifications: the star-shaped Fort St. Elmo, guarding the entrance to the Grand Harbour, and the fortified towns of Birgu and Senglea, protected by Fort St. Angelo. As the Ottoman fleet appeared on the horizon, de la Valette addressed his men. Today it is a question of the defence of our faith. If the Gospels must be taken from us, we must die. In May 1565, the Ottoman army landed. The azure waters of Marsaxlok Bay turned dark with their ships. The Turkish commanders decided to first neutralize Fort St. Elmo, believing it would fall in a matter of days. They unleashed a relentless bombardment from massive siege cannons that shook the very foundations of the island. Day after day, the stone walls crumbled under the barrage, and thousands of Janissaries swarmed the breach. The battle for Fort St. Elmo became a month-long nightmare of fire, steel, and desperation. The knights and soldiers inside fought with legendary courage. Wounded men who could no longer stand were carried to the walls in chairs, swords in hand, determined to die fighting. They knew their only mission was to buy time, to bleed the Ottoman army for every inch of ground. Finally, after 31 days of heroic resistance, the fort fell. Of the 2,500 defenders, only a handful survived. But their sacrifice was not in vain. The few days had turned into a month, costing the Ottomans 8,000 of their best troops, and crucially, their morale. The delay had been bought in blood. With St. Elmo gone, the full fury of the Ottoman army turned on the main strongholds of Birgu and Senglea. The bombardment that followed was even more intense. The air was filled with the constant roar of cannons, the splintering of stone, and the cries of the wounded. The civilian population of Malta fought alongside the knights. Women and children carried supplies, tended to the wounded, and even hurled rocks and boiling water on the attackers scaling the walls. Mustafa Pasha launched massive assaults, sending waves of Janissaries against the shattered walls. The fighting was brutal, hand-to-hand combat in the narrow breaches under the scorching Mediterranean sun. During one critical assault, even the 70-year-old Grand Master de la Valette himself seized a pike and plunged into the fray, inspiring his men to drive the enemy back. He refused to retire to safety, declaring, "I will die here with you." His leadership was the rock upon which the defense was built. The knights also launched daring raids known as sorties from their walls, striking at the Ottoman siege lines before vanishing back into the fortress. As the summer dragged on, the situation grew desperate. Food and gunpowder were running low. The number of defenders dwindled daily. The fortress was a ruin, the survivors exhausted and wounded. Yet, they refused to surrender. Their hope rested on a single promise: a relief force from the Spanish Viceroy of Sicily. But weeks turned into months. and no help arrived. The Ottomans, too, were suffering. Disease was rampant in their camp, their losses were staggering, and the summer heat was taking its toll. Their morale was crumbling. They had expected a quick victory, not this unyielding defiance. Then, in early September, just as all hope seemed lost, the tide turned. A small Spanish relief force, the Gran Soccorso, finally landed on the northern end of the island. Though only around 8,000 men, their arrival had a devastating psychological impact on the Ottoman army. Already weakened and demoralized, the news of fresh, battle-ready Christian soldiers shattered what was left of their will to fight. After one final half-hearted attack, Mustafa Pasha gave the order to retreat. The great siege was over. The aftermath was a scene of grim triumph. The Knights had won, but at a terrible price. Most of their number were dead. Malta was in ruins, but the Ottoman losses were catastrophic. It is estimated that they lost up to 30,000 men to battle and disease. The fleet limped back to Constantinople, not in victory, but in shame. The news of the tiny island's victory sent a wave of shock and inspiration across Europe. The myth of Ottoman invincibility was broken. In the years that followed, donations poured in from across Christendom. De la Valette laid the first stone of a magnificent new fortified city, a testament to the island's endurance. He named it Valletta in his honor. It would become the new capital of Malta, an even stronger fortress designed to withstand any future attack. The Great Siege cemented Malta's reputation as the bulwark of Europe, a role it would play for centuries to come. The Siege of Malta is more than just a battle. It is a powerful story about how a small group, armed with courage and an unshakable belief in their cause, can stand against overwhelming odds and emerge victorious. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of annihilation. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you find these stories as fascinating as we do, please subscribe for more history documentaries every week. We'll see you next time.